So we got a pretty healthy info dump today about the PlayStation 5 via Wired.com, and considering the way we get most of our news about the next-gen system these days, let me be clear that this isn't some rumor stemming from a Reddit post or 4chan. This was an official sit-down with the lead system architect for the console, Mark Cerny. There's obviously a lot of technobabble in here. The CPU is based on the third generation of AMD's Ryzen line and contains 8 cores of the company's new Zen 2 microarchitecture. The GPU is a custom variant of Radeon's Navi family. I think a lot of this was rumored before, and it will be supporting ray tracing. If you're unfamiliar, ray tracing is one of the big buzzwords mostly in the PC world right now. It has a lot to do with rendering reflections, the way light bounces off, say, a mirror or water, or let's say something like a car or armor. They even state in here it's about achieving heightened realism. And speaking of buzzwords, the system will also support 8, yes, count 'em, 8K graphics. While that is all impressive, some of it does worry me a bit in terms of just where their head's at with some of these things. I feel like consoles, again, often find themselves getting caught up in chasing these trends and stuff that sound good in a pitch. Like, oh, 8K, that's fancy, that's 2 times as much as 4K. I'm someone playing on the current hardware, the advanced versions, the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. Who knows, that frame rates are still all over the place in a lot of games. Just as with titles like Destiny today, okay? I don't want to play a shooter on the next-gen system in 8K and 30 frames per second. Sekiro, the game's juddering all over the place on consoles. These are the types of improvements I'm personally looking for. Let's worry about getting the games running at a mere 60 frames per second steadily, and then worry about 8K. I mean, Jesus, 4K is still having trouble reaching the mass market. Tons of people haven't even upgraded to that yet. I think having 8K be mainstream is still so far off that you wouldn't even need to worry about it until like the PS5 Pro or something like that. Sure, when we're talking about a generational shift, you do want them to go big, but I just worry sometimes that some of the more important areas aren't being given as much consideration in the console realm. Frame rate being a big one. I feel really bad for people who've never experienced a game on like 144Hz monitor and know how much of an improvement frame rate can be. But there are other aspects I worry about that they are addressing. There was a lot of talk about the storage for the console. Games are getting out of control with their file sizes. Titles like Red Dead Redemption 2 are coming in around 100 gigs, and we're seeing more and more problems with the load times in these big games. Anthem recently stands out in my mind as a really bad one where it felt like you could go have a meal or something during loading screens. Well, the PlayStation 5 is going to come packed in with an SSD, a solid-state hard drive, that will dramatically improve those load times. Not only that, because you could get an external even for the current gen of consoles, but this is a specialized drive for the PlayStation 5, and for demonstration, Cerny used the PS4's critically acclaimed Spider-Man game. The writer of the article notes that first they ran the game on the PS4 and fast-traveled around, and those load times were about 15 seconds. On the dev kit for the PS5, though, those same load times were cut down to under 1 second, 0.8 seconds to be exact. It's also noted that rendering can be greatly improved with the new SSD, the rate at which environments are loaded in. Again, Spider-Man's environments are used. They showed a camera view moving through the city, and Cerny noted, again, they started with the PS4, and that on that version, the camera goes about as fast as Spider-Man can swing through the city, which was also about as fast as any player could move through that environment because of how fast it could be rendered on the PS4. Then they demonstrated what was possible on the PlayStation 5. This time, the camera moved through the city at the speed of a, quote, fighter jet, with Cerny even opting to pause periodically to prove that the environment was still completely crisp despite those fast speeds. This is a big deal, as games obviously are going to continue to get bigger and more demanding, and by making these specialty SSDs the standard for the PS5, every developer is going to know that they don't have to gimp things like travel speed. Let's say it may be in a game where you're piloting an actual jet or some high-speed vehicle, maybe even flying around the city as a superhero. And of course, those load times, they can be super immersion breaking if they feel too drawn out. So it's awesome to know that all that's going to be heavily combated in the next gen. And then there was what, in my opinion, was the big reveal. Well, even before that, as sort of a preamble, the system will accept physical media, which I find is just sad that that's something we feel we have to specify these days. But yeah, this is something I've stated in numerous videos that Sony absolutely has to do for the next generation. The PlayStation 5 system architecture will be based on the PS4's, and thus, the system will be backwards compatible. Meaning yes, you will be able to play your PlayStation 4 games on your PlayStation 5. Something like 90 million PS4s have been sold to date, meaning you've got close to that many people who own PS4 games, and that means if you're one of those people, you already have games to play on your PS5. I hope this also means some of these games, at least the bigger ones, get some enhanced versions. Obviously, they'll just benefit naturally from things like the SSD, as was mentioned, the load times in something like Spider-Man. But I think that could be a huge early adopter selling point if you had some of the big titles like Spider-Man, God of War, and Horizon Zero Dawn, for instance, get big enhancement updates for the PS5. They don't have to get like full-blown remasters, but, just further upping the frame rates, upping the visual quality. And it was also mentioned that there will be several titles during this generational shift that will be released for both the PS4 and the PS5. In the interview, the writer asked about Death Stranding in specific, and while he was only given official word about the game coming to the PS4, he noted that Cerny's demeanor after being asked about it suggested it will probably be on the PS5 as well. This is also something I've been saying for a long time, that I'd bet heavily that some of these games, specifically I've said The Last of Us 2 and Death Stranding, end up releasing on both platforms. I, again here, hope that with the systems being backwards compatible, that the PS4 versions of these games would get like PS5 enhanced updates if you play them on the new system. Like, let's take Death Stranding. Let's say it comes out at the end of this year, but the PS5 doesn't come out till the end of next year. I hope they make it so you can buy it and play it at release on the PS4 when it releases, but then when the PS5 comes out and you buy it, you can use that PS4 disc on the PS5 and get the same experience as those who buy the PlayStation 5 version. I just can't stand situations like the original Last of Us release, for instance, where it's like the game came out at the end of the PlayStation 3's life, and it was seriously like a year later, the remastered edition came out for PS4. In an age where games can easily get these enhancements as updates, this sort of double dipping is totally unnecessary, and I hope they respect the consumers with this. But yeah, in terms of some early details, I'm really liking what I'm hearing. It seems like this console will have the substantial power needed for playing those next-gen games, and they're also not skimping in aspects like onboard storage, which has been kind of the norm for consoles. And that backwards compatibility confirmation gives me a huge, massive sigh of relief as well. Anyway, with that, this video's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on these new PlayStation 5 details in the comments. Is any of this making you more interested in Sony's next-gen system? Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this discussion of Sony's official PlayStation 5 details. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And if you want to keep the conversation going, hit me up on Twitter, @JohnnyZakari, and join my Discord, ChiGuy and Friends. Link to both in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching.